Okay, for number 1, it asks, in the 2007 season, baseball player Alex Rodriguez hit 54 home runs in 582 at-bats. That is a significantly large amount of sample size, so that could be considered our ability because we have this law of large numbers kicking in that suggests the more sample size that you introduce, the more performances you introduce, the closer and closer and closer you're going to get to that actual ability. But that's for a later time. It says in 2007 playoffs, he hit 1 out of 15. So in one performance, he had 1 out of 15. And it wants us to create a bar graph to compare the performances. So anytime that you create a bar graph, you always want percentages on the left-hand side. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to calculate what those percentages are. So we have the regular season, which was 54 out of 582, which gives us a percentage or a decimal of 0.0927. You move the decimal place over twice, becomes 9.27%. For the playoffs, he hit 1 in 15. 1 divided by 15 is going to give you 0.0667, which becomes 6.67%. Sorry, it doesn't look like a 6. So then from here, my graph has to start at 0, but it doesn't necessarily have to go to 100 because it's small numbers. The numbers that I'm graphing is going to be the 9.27% and the 6.67%. So I'm going to go up by just ones. So 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I ran out of a little bit of space, but that's okay. So at the bottom is my categories, which I have the category of the regular season and the playoffs. Okay, and then all I have to do is make my graph. Overall, this is going to be about number of home runs or home runs from Alex Rodriguez. So I'm going to graph my regular season all the way up to 9.27% and my playoffs to 6.67, so a little bit over 6. You can also graph the number of home runs that or the amount of percentage that he doesn't hit a home run, and you could do that next to it. So let's say, for example, if I'm finding the percent that he didn't hit a home run, then I would do 100 minus the 9.27, and I would get about 90%, 90.6%, and you would have to graph that next to it. If you were to add that piece of information, it would go outside of my screen. But if you were to add that piece of information, you would have to make sure that you gave me a key that represented this is non-home runs, and then the red would be home runs. So make sure that you provide a key if you are going to differentiate between the two percentages, so the blue versus the red. Okay, and then it says briefly describe what you see. So I would just say something like Alex Rodriguez has a greater performance in the regular season. So Alex Rodriguez has a greater performance in the regular season. And the big thing here is I want to use the vocabulary of performance because I'm looking at his performances between the two. And I want to use this vocab because we know that performance is a key word for this unit.